how flow control will occur. So for that, how many protocols are used, right? So yesterday I already informed you that tomorrow I'll discuss point-to-point protocol, right? So what is point-to-point protocol? So first of all, in nowadays, point-to-point is mostly used because uh, flow control and error control both are there, but still, why it is more famous? Because under point-to-point protocol, so many other protocols are working. So that's why this protocol is more powerful than remaining all, right? So mostly used protocol at data link layer, and its short form is point-to-point protocol. It is used for point-to-point or point-to-multi-point approach, right? Now, services of point-to-point protocol. In exam, they'll directly ask point-to-point protocol in 5-6 marks. It's there. I'll show you. Today, I'll also discuss previous questions which I discussed during this lockdown period. So if you have any query in that question, then I'll solve it. Services of point-to-point protocol. First, services define the format of frame. So it will basically synchronize between sender and receiver. Both will agree on one frame format that this should be followed, right? So frame format is decided by sender and receiver using this point-to-point protocol. Next one is how two devices can negotiate the establishment of the link and the exchange of the data. So like that data circuit switching, here also so many phases are there. First you have to establish the connection, and then sender and receiver can transmit the frames, right? So how means basically it will define how two devices can negotiate the establishment of the link, right? So before transferring the data, first phase is establishment. So for that it is working. I'll discuss the transmission phase of point to point also. Next functionality of point to point is how network layer data encapsulate in the data link frame. Means what? Whatever data is coming from network layer, how it will encapsulate that kind of agreement also sender and receiver can do under this point to point protocol. How two devices can authenticate each other, so it is more secure because authentication is there before transmitting data between sender and receiver. One authentication between sender and receiver, or first they'll decide that what kind of authentication we require to send the request. After that uh, after that they'll complete the proper authentication process, then and then they can transfer the data, right? So it is more secure, so that's why it is mostly used protocol. Next one is connection over multiple links, right? So it is used for point to point as well as point to multi point. Now, next functionality is network address configuration. When user are not in the radius home address, means what? If I took the example of cellular phone, then if my user is not there in that home address, let's say I'm living in some Bangalore's area, right? So at this place, my home address is registered. Now, let's say I'm not in my home place, I am at my native place. Then user or whoever is sending, they have to use another virtual address or temporary address, right? So for that purpose, that establishment of the temporary address, this protocol is also used. So network address configuration, when the user is not in that home address, whenever sender wants to send something but user is not in that home address, so at that time temporary address is used. In cellular network, we'll discuss what is this virtual network and temporary network. Don't worry. So basically, whenever user is not there in their home address radius, at that time they have to use some temporary address. Which temporary address they are going to use, for that also this network address configuration purpose, this point to point protocol is used. So this is some of the advanced feature this point to point protocol is using. That's why nowadays it's mostly used. Next functionality is no flow control. Means a point to point protocol is not providing proper flow control. It is using other protocols or sub protocols for flow control, but not proper functionality of flow control. At point to point. But main thing or this main advantage of this point to point protocol is simply authentication is more powerful, plus so many other protocols are working under it. So for flow control, error control, they are hiring or they are dealing with other protocols also. So no error control, but for that they are using CRC. Flow control also, they can use so many other flow control techniques, right? Yesterday I discussed, right, go back and selective repeat, sliding window, stop and wait ARQ. So other flow control techniques they can use under it. So next, doesn't provide a sophisticated addressing mechanism. So previously we are using more focused on addressing only, means whatever frame we are sending, in addressing part we are more focused that it should be like this, it should not be like this. Means we are focusing on addressing purpose only, but here they are focusing on authentication mainly. So they are not the sophisticated way, they are not providing an addressing mechanism. Yes, it is using, but not that much, means it not that much prior, right? Now, what is a frame format? First of all, it is byte-oriented protocol. Whenever I discuss bit-oriented and byte-oriented, at that time I told it nowadays network are using bit-oriented protocol. But this is the one protocol which is byte-oriented and still it is used. Now, frame format of this protocol is first flag bit. I already discussed flag bit should be 0, 1, 1, 0. You all know, right? 0, 5, 1, and then 0, right? So flag bit, 8-bit flag bits are there, or we can say 1 byte, right? Next one is address. Here, if I want to, one more feature is there. Normally, we can add destination address. That is normal. Through other protocol also, we are simply adding the destination address, right? But here, if I give all ones, then it is a broadcast address. Let's say within some specific network, if I want to broadcast that packet at that time, I have to use this triple all ones, 8 ones. So this is a new feature in point-to-point protocol. Now next one is control. 8-bit control bit are there. So in control bit, no flow control, error detection only. Means here we are not dealing with error correction. We are mostly using with error detection. Using CRC, we can detect the error, right? We cannot correct the error. So basically, this is not that much focused on flow control and error control, but it is more focused on what I can say authentication, plus if my user is not in that particular address, so finding the temporary address. This kind of mechanism is extra added in this point-to-point protocol, and that's why it is famous. Now, next is two parties can agree during negotiation to omit this byte, right? So let's say two parties, sender and receiver, are agree to reduce this byte, let's say, or increase this byte control bit, 1 bit, 2 bit, 8-bit, then 16-bit. It is totally dependent on two parties, means sender and receiver. Here all the things are dynamic. Whenever that establishment phase is there, whenever sender and receiver is establishing the connection, at that time they can decide the, let's say, protocol field, they want to keep it as 8-bit. So sender and receiver both will agree on 8-bit, then they will follow the 8-bit process. Or control bit, it is not required. Let's say simply they are transmitting very, means not that much authenticate information, so they can remove this control bit for 1-2 packets. So this is basically or fully dependent on sender and receiver approaches, right? Now, so that's why it's more useful or more famous. Now protocols define what is being carried in the data field. Means protocol for whatever data I am transmitting over here, whatever payload information data, same thing. So whatever payload or data I am transmitting, for that I am using some protocol. So sender and receiver can send this kind of data only. It should not be means any mischief or any mischief should not be there. So for that also they are using some protocol. So if my if that much authentication is not required, then they will reduce this protocol bit also. Either they'll use 8-bit or 16-bit. So if it is not required, if data is more and more secure, then they have to use 16-bit protocol. Now, next one is payload fill. Maximum they can send 1500 bytes. Now, next one is FCS. FCS means what? In previous protocol also we are dealing with FCS in HDLC and all these things. For that, 2-byte or 4-byte stands for CRC. For what reason we are using this? Error detection, right? Yeah, 16-bit or 32-bit. So it is also dependent on sender and receiver. Both can decide, means how much they want to share, or what is the portion of this CRC bit, 16-bit or 32-bit. Now, next one is byte stuffing. You all know how we can stuff the byte. I already discussed bit stuffing as well as byte stuffing, right? So here they are using byte stuffing approach. In byte oriented protocol, right, we are using this ESE field, if you remember, right? So this is ESE field, 0 followed by 5 ones and then 1 0. So that is ESE field over here whenever we are stuffing something. Why we are stuffing this? Whenever my flag bit as well as data bit is similar, at that time I have to use something to say user that this is not the flag bit. Means if receiver will consider as a flag bit during the payload, then they'll simply means they'll understand that this is the end of the frame. So it receiver will receive only half of the data. So for that reason, we have to use this ESC bit, right? Now, transition phase. In exam, they'll directly ask that frame forward and transition phase of point-to-point protocol in 6 marks, right? So it is really useful according to exam point of view. So like circuit switching, here also we are establishing the connection first, right? So this is dead state. After that, establish. After that, authenticate. Then network, open, and terminate. All of these are phases of our point-to-point protocol, right? One by one, I'll explain. But first of all, roughly, I'll explain through this diagram. Dead state means what? Now the point-to-point protocol is not transmitting anything, right? So no establishment between sender and receiver. After that, carrier detected, then they'll establish the connection. After that, if both the parties are agreed, so option agreed by both the parties, after that authentication should be there, right? So after that, if authentication fails, then terminate the connection. If authentication is successful, then network, means whatever data I'm borrowing or I'm getting from network bit, for that also I'm using some authentication, or I already informed, right, that for network bit also addressing is important. That all these terminologies they'll discuss over here. Network layer means if the both parties is agrees on that network layer, what data they'll for receive, both all the things, if they'll agree, then open means they'll start the data transfer, right? Here also, if authentication is not needed, then after establishment directly they can go to this network phase. So they can ignore this authentication, but most of the time they'll use this authentication. But whenever data is not that much important or that much secure, then and then they reduce or they can remove this authentication step. Now, I already discussed dead statements. What? Link is not being used, no active carrier, right? So right now it is in dead position. After that, establish means what? If the negotiation is successful, go to authentication phase, right? So basically it's a handshaking kind of thing. They both are agreed on same thing or not, they'll check. After that, authentication, they send several authentication packets, right? Both has to accept it or both have to authenticate for that particular data transfer piece, right? After that, network means what? Network layer agreement negotiation for the network layer protocols, means how many protocols they are used for network layer, whatever data they are getting from network layer, for that also they have to agree over here, right? So point-to-point protocol is supporting so many network layer protocols also. Means data link layer and network layer both are connected, right? So data is obviously coming from network layer. So for that also, point-to-point protocol has to follow or has to support so many network layer protocols so that they can receive that data securely, right? Or easily. After that, point-to-point support multiple protocol at network layer, right? So it is supporting point to point as well as multi-point, both the connection. Now open means if data transfer phase, right? Simply sender and receiver is transmitting the data. Exchange of the data packet is started in open phase. And terminate means what? Cleaning and closing the links, right? Simply they are terminating the connection. Now several other protocols which are used under this point to point protocol is first is means basically three types of protocol are working under point to point protocol. First one is link control authentication, and third one is network control protocol, right? So under the link layer also, link control protocol, establishing, maintaining, configuring, terminating the links. This kind of functionality they'll support under link control protocol, right? Whenever we are establishing the link, maintain for maintenance purpose of that particular link configuration, then termination, for that they are using link control protocol. After that, authentication protocol means what? First protocol under this authentication protocol is PAP, means password authentication protocol, and second one is CHAP, means challenge handshake authentication protocol. So you have to remember this which kind of another protocol are working under which category. Three categories. First one is link control, second one authentication, third one network control. Inside authentication, two more protocols are working. First one is PAP, means password authentication protocol. Second one is challenge handshake authentication protocol. And third one is network control protocol. Inside this network control, they are using IPCP, means what? Internet Protocol Control Protocol. I know name is little bit tricky, but IPCP, Internet Protocol Control Protocol.